Ready for a deep dive, you guys, into self-discovery?
Always.
Today we're diving into this YouTube video that's like everywhere online right now.
Oh, yeah.
Life begins when you find yourself.
Hmm.
It's from a channel called The Counselor.
Okay.
Have you seen this one?
I have. Yeah, it's gotten a ton of views, and it's got some really like insightful ideas about like identity and purpose.
Yeah.
But we're gonna go deeper than just summarizing it, right?
Right. Yeah, we're going to unpack like the key takeaways and explore what it really means to, find yourself.
That's the big question, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think what's so interesting about this video is that it's taking these timeless concepts,
Yeah.
from Carl Jung, like the persona and the shadow, and it's making them like incredibly relevant to the challenges that we face in modern life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a bridge between classic psychology and like navigating the 21st century.
Okay, so let's jump right in with this idea of the mask we wear. Now, the video uses this really powerful analogy of a mask, but not in the way we usually think of it, right? It's not about like hiding who we are.
Right.
It's more like a representation of like what the world expects us to be.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that goes right to the heart of Jung's concept of the persona. That social mask that we all kind of create based on, everything from our family dynamics to cultural norms to like societal pressures.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're playing different roles, to kind of fit in and get approval.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
I never thought of it like that, but it's so true. Like when I first started my career, I felt like I had to act super serious and buttoned up all the time, even if that wasn't really my personality.
Right.
And it's not just about careers either. It's relationships too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We all kind of present a certain version of ourselves to the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the video really emphasizes how essential this persona actually is.
We need it to function in society.
Right.
To build relationships, to navigate the complexities of daily life.
Right.
It's not inherently bad.
Right. It's like a tool.
It is.
We use.
It is a tool.
Yeah, but here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
What happens when that tool starts to feel like a...
Ooh, that's a good question.
That's
when the tension arises.
Yeah.
The video highlights how we can become so identified with this mask, with the expectations it represents, that we lose touch with our true self.
Oh, yeah.
It's like we're living someone else's script instead of our own.
That resonates with me so much. I had a friend who went through this whole identity crisis a few years ago. He had this high-powered job, the perfect family, all the outward signs of success.
Yeah.
But he felt completely empty inside.
Wow. Like
he was living this picture-perfect life that wasn't actually his.
That's a classic example of the persona becoming a prison. The video talks about, those feelings of being stuck in a rut, of having relationships that lack depth, that nagging sense of, is this all there is?
Oh, yeah.
And, I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Totally. And I think what's so brilliant about the video is that it frames this feeling not as something to be ashamed of,
right?
But as a sign of growth. It's like that discomfort is a signal.
Yeah.
A wake-up call telling us we're ready to move beyond the superficial and start exploring who we really are.
Precisely. And that exploration often leads us face to face.
Yeah.
With what Jung called the shadow. All those hidden parts of ourselves.
Okay.
That we've pushed down, ignored, or denied.
This is where I think a lot of people might get a little nervous.
Yeah.
The shadow.
Yeah, it sounds a little scary, right?
Yeah, it sounds kind of scary. Like, are we talking about our darkest secrets and impulses here?
Well, it can encompass those things.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily all doom and gloom.
Right.
The video does a really good job of explaining that the shadow is simply the parts of ourselves that we haven't fully integrated into our conscious awareness. It's not inherently good or bad. It's just
So it's like those aspects of ourselves that we've deemed unacceptable, maybe even shameful.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of shoved them into the basement of our psyche.
That's a great way to put it. And it's important to remember that the shadow isn't just about negative traits.
Okay.
It can also contain positive qualities that we've disowned or suppressed. Maybe because they don't fit our current narrative about ourselves.
Oh, wow. So someone who's always seen themselves as shy and reserved
might
actually have like a hidden outgoing side that they've never allowed themselves to express.
Exactly. Or someone who's like super driven and successful might have a sensitive artistic side.
Wow.
That they've buried because it doesn't fit their image of a powerful leader.
Right.
The shadow can hold unacknowledged talents, desires, even sources of strength.
Yeah. Okay, so this is all pretty mind-blowing.
It is.
But if the shadow is all this hidden stuff, how do we actually access it?
Yeah.
How do we even know what's lurking down there?
That's where things get really interesting, and that's where we'll pick things up in part 2.
Oh, man. Okay.
All right.
Welcome back, everyone. So uncovering the shadow.
Yeah.
Pretty intense stuff.
It's heavy, but it's also where things get really transformative.
Right.
Remember, this whole deep dive is about self-discovery.
Yeah.
And facing the shadow is like a crucial part of that journey.
So how do we actually do that? How do we confront these hidden parts of ourselves?
Well, the video doesn't really dive deep into specific techniques, which I think is a good thing, actually. It keeps the focus on the core principles.
Right.
But it does emphasize the importance of becoming more aware.
Yeah.
Of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
So paying attention to those things that we tend to brush aside or ignore.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, it's that feeling of annoyance I get when someone cuts me off in traffic. I usually just try to let it go.
Yeah.
But maybe there's something more there.
Maybe there is. Exactly those seemingly small reactions can often be clues to deeper patterns and beliefs.
Yeah.
The video talks about things like recurring dreams, strong emotional reactions, and those little voices of self-criticism that we all have. It's about paying attention to those things without judgment.
Okay, so it's not about judging those shadow parts, but more about getting curious about them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The video uses this analogy of befriending the shadow, which I think is so powerful.
Right.
Instead of trying to banish or suppress those parts of ourselves, we can learn to acknowledge them, understand them, even integrate them into our sense of self.
So it's not about becoming some kind of perfectly enlightened being.
Right.
But about accepting that we're complex,
yeah,
multifaceted individuals.
Exactly.
Warts and all.
Yeah, the video makes the point that, this process of shadow work can be incredibly liberating.
Right.
It's reclaiming those disowned parts of ourselves and integrating them into a more whole and authentic sense of self.
Wow, that's really resonating with me. I can see how that would lead to more self-acceptance.
Yeah.
And even a deeper sense of compassion for ourselves and others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it can also lead to a more fulfilling and purposeful life.
Okay.
Remember, the shadow often hold hidden talents and desires.
Right.
By bringing those things into the light, we open ourselves up to new possibility experience.
Oh, that's such a good point. So confronting the shadow.
Yeah.
It isn't just about uncovering the dark stuff.
Right.
It's about unlocking our full potential.
Exactly. Now, the video also touches on a concept that's really closely related to this process of shadow work.
Yeah.
Individuation.
Okay.
It's one of Jung's most important ideas. And it's essentially this lifelong journey of becoming a more complete and integrated individual.
Okay. Individuation. Oh. That sounds like a pretty big word.
Yeah, I know, right?
Can you break it down for us?
Sure. Think of it like this. We all start out with a kind of blueprint for who we're supposed to be.
Right.
Based on, our family, our culture, society. But as we go through life, we start to realize that this blueprint might not fit perfectly.
Right.
You might have different desires.
Yeah.
Different values, different ways of seeing the world.
So it's about breaking free from those external expectations.
Yeah.
And figuring out who we truly are deep down.
Exactly. It's about shedding those layers of conditioning and becoming more aligned with our authentic selves. And this process often starts with a sense of being lost, stuck, or unfulfilled.
Okay.
It's like that nagging feeling we talked about earlier, that sense that something's missing.
Like those times in life when we hit a wall and start questioning everything.
Yep.
What am I doing with my life? Who am I really?
Precisely. And the video emphasizes that these moments of crisis are actually opportunities for growth. They're a chance to step off the well-worn path.
Right.
And embark on a journey of self-discovery.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all ties together. Confronting the shadow, individuation, living with purpose. It's all part of the same journey.
Exactly. And that's where things get really exciting.
Right.
It's we're moving from a state of unconsciousness to a state of conscious awareness, from living on autopilot to living with intention.
So how does this translate into practical terms?
Yeah.
What does it actually look like to live a more purposeful life? It really makes you think about all the choices that we're making every single day, you know? Are they leading us towards a life that we truly desire, or are we just going through the motions?
That's the heart of it, isn't it? And the video doesn't give us a, step-by-step guide, which I think is intentional.
Right.
It's more about cultivating a certain awareness, a willingness to check in with ourselves.
Yeah.
And ask does this align with my values?
Yeah.
Is this moving me closer to the person I want to be?
So it's not necessarily about making these huge sweeping life changes.
Right.
But more About those like smaller daily decisions.
Exactly. The video uses this great example of like someone who decides to spend just 15 minutes each day writing.
Okay.
Which, might not seem like much, but it's a step towards honoring a creative passion.
Yeah.
And who knows where that could lead.
I love that. And it makes me think of something I've been struggling with. I've always wanted to learn how to play the piano. But I keep putting it off.
Yeah.
I tell myself I don't have time, but maybe it's more about making it a priority.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
That's a perfect example. It's about those small, consistent actions that add up over time.
Right.
It's like planting a seed and nurturing it. And even if we don't see immediate results, the act of showing up for ourselves, of honoring those inner nudges, is incredibly powerful.
Okay, so we're talking about making choices that are aligned with our values and our authentic selves.
Yeah.
But what about those times when things get tough?
Yeah.
Does living with purpose make us somehow immune to challenges and setbacks?
I wish it were that easy.
Yeah. Right.
But the video acknowledges that life is messy. There will always be ups and downs.
Right.
But it makes this really interesting point. When we have a strong sense of why we're doing what we're doing, it gives us this sense of grounding and resilience.
So it's like having that anchor in a storm.
Exactly. It's like knowing that even if things are chaotic on the surface, there's a deeper purpose guiding our choices.
Right.
And that can make all the difference in how we navigate those difficult times.
And it's not just about our individual journeys either, right? The video talks about how living with purpose impacts our relationships too.
Absolutely. It's like when we start living more authentically, it ripples outward. We begin to attract people who share our values, who support our growth, who challenge us in healthy ways.
And maybe we start letting go of those relationships that no longer serve us.
That can be part of it too.
Yeah.
It's not about judging others, but about being mindful of the energy we exchange.
Yeah.
Are our relationships reciprocal? Do they nourish us or drain us?
Right.
As we become more self-aware, we're often better equipped to set boundaries and communicate our needs more effectively.
I think that's such a crucial point because so often we stay in relationships out of habit or obligation, even if they're not truly fulfilling. But living with purpose gives us that courage to create relationships that are truly aligned with who we are.
It's amazing how these themes of self-discovery, purpose, and relationships are all so interconnected, isn't it?
It is, and it kind of brings us to this idea of legacy, which the video explores in a really powerful way. It's about the impact we have on the world, the mark we leave behind.
It's a big question.
When I think about legacy, I used to think about like these grand achievements or like material possessions.
Right.
But the video really challenges that notion.
It does. It emphasizes that a true legacy is built on the values we embody, the connections we make, and the inspiration we offer to others.
Right.
And it's not about waiting until we're older or more successful to start thinking about it. We're creating our legacy every single day through our choices and our actions.
That takes the pressure off in a way.
Yeah.
It's not about like striving for some grand, unattainable goal.
Right.
It's about simply showing up authentically and living with intention.
Exactly. The video shares these like beautiful examples of people who have left behind positive legacies through small, everyday acts of kindness and courage.
Yeah.
It could be a teacher who inspires their students.
Right.
The volunteer who dedicates their time to helping others.
Yeah.
Or simply someone who lives with integrity and compassion.
Right. And those small acts can have a ripple effect that we might never fully comprehend.
Absolutely. Think about the people who have had a profound impact on your life.
Yeah.
It's often not their achievements or possessions that you remember.
Right.
It's their character, their kindness, the way they made you feel.
That's so true. And it's a powerful reminder that we all have the capacity to make a difference in the world, no matter who we are or what we do.
And the video doesn't shy away from the fact that, life is finite. Our time here is precious.
Yeah.
So the question it poses is, what do I want to be remembered for? What kind of impact do I want to leave on the world?
That is such a powerful question to reflect on.
It is.
And it brings us back to that quote from earlier. Life begins when you find yourself.
It really does, doesn't it? It's like when we embrace our authentic selves and start living with purpose, we truly come alive.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into life begins when you find yourself, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
It's never too late to embark on this journey of self-discovery. It's never too late to start living with intention and purpose.
Yeah.
And it's never too late to make a positive impact on the world.
What a perfect way to end this conversation.
I hope you enjoyed this deep dive, you guys, and be sure to check out part 1 and 2 if you haven't already.
Thanks for listening, everyone.